Hey everybody, this is Adam from Tungsten Amplification, and today we are going to convert this 1961 Vibrolux output from an RCA jack to a 1/4 inch. As always, we want to make sure that we're not going to electrocute ourselves or anybody else, so the amplifier is unplugged. And I'm going to attach a jumper wire between ground over here. Make sure you can see that. That's our chassis. And the farthest plate resistor away from the power transformer. It's right here. That will slowly bleed off the voltage. I gotta stick something under here. It's already irritating me. We're just getting started. What can I put under there? How about a capacitor? No, it's not gonna do it. How about a screwdriver? This is quality television, I know. That's better. Okay. So, just to be pedantic, if that's even the proper word, I'm going to clip my multimeter here to ground, set it up for voltage, which is how they say voltage in Canada, and we're going to go to the first filter cap, and we have 0.001. That's good. This amplifier is safe to work on, and as long as we leave this thing attached, voltage will not find its way back in there. Sometimes those capacitors will store up their voltage and start to charge themselves, and just don't want to worry about that. I've had a lot of friends, some of them famous amp builders, as famous as you can be as an amp builder, I guess, that have shocked themselves with hundreds and hundreds of volts of DC and been thrown across their workshop, which really sucks. I've been lucky. I've only been shocked one time. I'll just go into story time here while we're talking. I'm going to pull these tubes because they're vintage and I don't want to destroy them by rolling the chassis around. So one time I was working on a 59 Bassman. Somebody had brought it to me, and it had a power issue, which turned out to be a faulty standby switch. Some genius technician in the past took a Sprague Atom, not a little baby one like this. He had a Sprague Atom that was that long and about yay big around, and he mounted it to the back side of the chassis and then wired that into the standby switch, so that whenever the standby switch failed, this big ass capacitor would kick in with its own voltage to maintain the stability of the amp. It made sense in theory, but a $2 Carling switch was the proper solution to that problem. So I'm working on that amp, and I realized that the standby switch was bad, because when you would jiggle it a little bit to the middle position and just even at the extreme end, the power indicator light would go out. So I worked on it, eventually got it figured out, but when I was in the process of changing that standby switch, I'm up here doing stuff, and I had the replacement standby switch in my left hand, and I must have touched that terminal while I was holding the chassis, and that cap discharged, and this arm here, I don't know if you can see that, this arm here flew over my shoulder and threw that switch across the room. It was only a split second, but it taught me once again to be careful and to always clip this lead on there. Always. But equally important, unless you want to smell what the guts of your power transformer are like, make sure to unclip that before you power your amp on. Okay, story time's over. The whole reason we're here today is because I've got this 61 Vibrolux. It's got an RCA output jack. That was cool in 1960, but the client that owns this has other speaker cabs that he'd like to plug into. So I talked to him this morning. He gave me the okay to go ahead and do this, and I'm going to go ahead and do this. What do we have here? I'm getting ready to jump the gun. So I'm going to tilt the chassis. You should have a really clear shot in there if I put the light down here a little bit. Let's try to get this. These are the highest production standards. I go to extreme lengths for you guys. That's what I'm here for. Find my magnifying glasses. If you're over 40, get yourself some of these. I have turned 50 and I need them. Gen X problems. hashtag. Alright, got my iron already heated up here. Try to make some room on this side of the bench. A lot of shit up here. If you have children in the room, get them the F out, because I'm going to curse occasionally, and, you know, it's all good, as the kids used to say 20 years ago. We're going to tin our tip, and we're going to disconnect the negative feedback wire and the secondary output transformer wire from the tip connection here. Solder has heated. If that solder looks fresh, it's because I was working on the output transformer earlier this week. This amp has had a long history being worked on by myself and other techs. This was the second time it's been here. It had some freak issue going on where when you turned on the tremolo, you were getting all this real high hash noise that was unpleasant to listen to. And I mean, I've been through this entire circuit, and this is the second time this amp has been rebuilt. Not by me. It was rebuilt in the 90s by a tech out on the West Coast, and he did a good job. You know, some of the parts he used were not the parts I would use, but I'm not going to shit all over him. You know, there's no point for that. So when I got it, I knew there was a voice coil issue with the speaker. This amp had been converted to a 12-inch baffle, and it had a vintage P12R, and it was just tired. Customer wanted to keep it in there, not a problem. So I rebuilt on the first visit the electrolytics, and these two output caps were mismatched, different brands and everything. So I asked the customer if I could just go ahead and make that right, and he was happy to. This part of the amp had been rebuilt by the previous tech with ceramic disc capacitors, which in and of itself is not bad. You know, there's no problem there. But because we were having a problem with that noise in the tremolo section, I wanted to rebuild the oscillator. I just wanted to do it with film caps properly, the way that it would have left the Fender factory. While I was in there this time, I noticed that the orange drop that was in here previously looked pretty burnt and scorched. So I replaced that. You know, just kind of doing general maintenance. This original first position orange drop was from the previous tech. There was nothing wrong there. It sounds good. The customer likes the sound of that cap in there, so I left it. Alright, so I shall continue here. I have taken out the screws and the nuts that were holding in the RCA jack, and it just pops right out like that. Because this is a vintage amp that's worth a few $1,000, I'm going to make sure the hardware all stays together here, if I can get it in there. There we go. And although I don't have it on my bench, it's sitting in the cabinet right now. I have a little plastic bag. So every part I took out of this amp, even the ones that were non-original, have all gone into that bag. And that bag can travel with the amplifier for the rest of its life. So here we go. There's the RCA jack. Nobody wants that on their guitar amplifier. And we've got a Switchcraft 12A. This is a shorting jack, so that when you remove the plug, the sleeve shorts to this tab, which is represented by this tab here. We're going to connect this tab to ground so that the tip, I'm sorry, I said the sleeve before, so that the tip will short to ground. That way if you power on your amp with no speaker attached, hopefully that will save your output transformer from burning up, which is always a good thing, because in my opinion, based on building amps for 20 years and working on them for 30, is that the two most important components in your amplifier for tone are the output transformer and the speaker. This is based on lots of experimentation, lots of building different circuits and trying them through different cabs, lots of client feedback. You know, I love when people try out different things and get back to me, tell me, hey, you know, I tried a G12H30 in my 5E3 and it was awesome. It peeled paint off the walls. That's what somebody told me the other day, which I thought was super cool. It's not my favorite speaker pairing for that amplifier, but it's also not a bad choice. It's just different. Everybody's got their own set of ears. I hear things in a very specific way That's why I voice my amps the way I do, and my pedals too. That's why I choose the speakers I do. I don't like excessive treble. I like clarity. I like a little bit of crispness, but I don't like it to be super bright in your face, but it also has to have enough definition and clarity that it's cutting through in a mix and not getting lost. I gotta grab a star washer, so let me disconnect you guys from my lapel and I'll be right back. For those of you that don't know, I do all of my amp repair in a full tuxedo. I find that I do better quality work that way, and I just feel dapper. And you know, when you're feeling dapper, the world can do you no wrong. So I try to feel dapper every day. Normally I would put a switchcraft jack in this orientation. I don't know why, just OCD. I've been doing this for the entire time I've been building amps, but because these wires are a little on the short side, I'm going to rotate that around the other way. I wonder if they could have made this chassis any wobblier to work on. A slightly taller power transformer could have resolved that problem. I was a little disappointed when I got to work on this amp that, as you can see, it does not have the masking tape in there. I've worked on a lot of them over the years that say Lupe or Lydia or Josie. When I was 20 years old was when that was in 1994, by the way. That's when I found out that, you know, Fender had these girls working on the line in the 50s building the Tweed amps, and like most people, it's kind of, it just paints a picture in your head, and there was something special about it. You know, these weren't built by guys that wanted to be rock stars or wanted to pose as rock stars. These were built by blue-collar workers on a production line in Southern California. I feel the same way about the people that built the Magnavoxes in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Like, to them, it was probably just a job, but what a piece of history to be a part of. So when I was 20, I found out about these ladies that were building these amps, and I guess I decided at that point that that's what I wanted to do with my life. You know, I didn't want to be Leo Fender. I wanted to be one of the production employees building amplifiers. Unfortunately, I had to start my own company to do that, and running a business has never been something that I was all that interested in. I just wanted to build stuff and just hope that it would sell. For 20 years it has, which is cool. But I don't have a lot of ego wrapped up in, you know, being that guy. I want to be the guy behind the scenes that makes sure that your amp is doing what it's supposed to. That's all the appreciation I really care about. Recognition. Alright. So here's a little thing. I don't know if you could see any of what I just did. Okay, yeah, good. I wonder if I can show this to you. Okay, so this right here is the ground connection for the output transformer. Back in the day, they soldered it right to the output transformer. So what that means is that this tab, we can go ahead and solder that. Oh, let me zoom in on the eyelet real quick. We can go ahead and solder this tab closed because there's nothing else that's going to go in that spot. So I will do that. And I just looked at the timer. You know, we're 15 minutes in here. This is not a 15-minute job. This is like a 5-minute job if I wasn't talking and telling story time. At some point in a future video, I will continue on with the tales of technicians I've known. I've learned something from every single one of them, and you know, that's kind of how this particular skill is passed down. I tried to go to college to learn how to do this, and after the third electronics class, I went up to the teacher because they had already started talking about solid state electronics, and I asked the teacher, I'm like, when are we going to learn about tubes? And the guy looked up from his desk with this puzzled look on his face and said, we're not. And the next day I dropped my electronics class because, frankly, I didn't give a shit about solid state electronics. I was going to learn how to build tube amps, and if that class was not going to assist me in that, I wasn't going to take that class. So I pretty much had to learn on my own. There were a lot of years of fumbling and not really understanding, and then I started to meet technicians that were much more experienced than I was, and just little dribs and drabs of information. You know, I'm sure that the people watching this video have their own interest in electronics and, you know, want to learn to work on amps, and hopefully you'll pick up on one thing, at least in one of my videos. I know I'm not a traditional engineer tech, never wanted to be. My brain doesn't work like that. So I kind of just been on my own path, doing things my own way, and hopefully some of my knowledge will get passed on. That's it for this job. I'll post a video of this being tested. I still have to replace the speaker in the cabinet. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.